Weekly pattern overview from Herb Stevens, meteorologist Herb Stevens, the skiing weatherman. It is late in the second week of February. This report is for SnoCountry.com, brought to you by UVEX. And the headline for the folks in the West, the question that's been on everybody's mind, is the pattern going to change? Is it finally changing meteorologically? Because the pattern over the last 6 weeks or so in the West has been one that has put most people to sleep, including the meteorologists. There's been very little in the way of big-ticket storms. Snow levels have been high in the coastal ranges. There have been some events that have slid down the spine of the Rockies to help areas in Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and down into Colorado. A couple of weak southern stream systems. But those big-ticket storms that we long for, the big powder days, they've just been MIA for quite some time now. And as we take a look at the regional close-up from the National Weather Service's Service of Watches and Warnings, not much happening. Some fog in the interior valleys, a little bit of wind down here in Southern California, but you don't notice anything related to snow on this map. And the reason is that the jet stream hasn't changed much in the course of the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. We have a sizable ridge here in the west, and it continues to dominate while we have a trough and a lot of storminess in the east, particularly in the northeast where the snows have been prodigious the last 3 weeks. This system down here in Old Mexico has occasionally thrown some moisture up into parts of New Mexico, and there's been some fairly good new snow lately at Sandia Peak and Angel Fire and on up to Taos. But by and large, this ridge has been messing things up for quite some time. But I want you to notice where the axis of the ridge is, because that is going to change, and ultimately that's going to bring about a change in the sensible weather at the surface in the west. Right now, underneath that ridge, the visible satellite shot shows you virtually nothing in the way of cloudiness. We have some clouds up here over the northern Rockies in spots. Quite a bit of moisture offshore, and there will be some light precipitation into the northwest late this week and into the weekend, and I emphasize light, and the snow levels will be anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 feet, so it's not going to be real helpful. We go ahead to Saturday and notice that the ridge has flattened out while there's an intense shortwave dropping into the northeast. They've got another storm coming in the northeast late in the weekend. That's going to cause more problems around Boston. But out here in the west, the ridge is starting to flatten out. The little trough that was over Old Mexico is going to back up a little bit, but it looks as though some shortwave energy is finally going to come over the top of the ridge. And we go ahead to Monday and notice this shortwave is down here over the Wasatch and the Rockies of Colorado and the Tetons, and I expect that this weekend we're going to see some snow from Big Sky down through Jackson Hole, light snows in the Wasatch, and then Sunday the snow will come into northern Colorado, with a surface low popping up down in the Four Corners region. The Monday surface map will have that low over New Mexico. It may be up here closer to the Colorado border. There'll be light to moderate snow falling from the mountains outside of Salt Lake City eastward into Colorado north of 70, and this system's going to continue to settle southward so that about 12 hours later, early Tuesday morning, there should be snow in southern Colorado and down into the mountains of New Mexico. And more importantly, with the axis of the ridge settling westward, that's going to allow this surface high to bring more in the way of cold air to the eastern slopes of the Rockies. Some of it will pour over into the Wasatch. It'll be a good 10 to 15 degrees colder as we get into early next week than it has been the past couple of weeks over just to the west of the spine of the Rockies. Out here in the coastal ranges, it'll be more of the same, though, because the ridge axis will still be close to you, but it's going to continue to migrate slowly but surely offshore. So overall, the news is good, but it's going to be a slow developing change in the pattern. The snowfall over the next 7 days, according to the GFS computer model, I kind of agree with the spatial distribution of this snow. You can see it's pretty much the spine of the Rockies and just a little bit west of there, down into New Mexico, with nothing in the way of new snow expected west of there, up into most of Washington, although this weekend the higher elevations could pick up a little bit of snow. And the Canadian model pretty much concurs with that spatial distribution, as I call it, of the snow, with the eastern slopes of the Rockies potentially getting some moderate amounts in the next 7 days, most of it coming from Sunday onward through Tuesday, and perhaps a little bit of snow right at the end of the 7-day period later next Thursday, as well as another short wave and cold front come out of Canada. Now, The 7-day forecast from the Canadian ensembles of the jet stream shows the same dominant upper-level trough focused here in the eastern half of the country, but notice that 7 days from now, the idea that the ridge gets beaten down a little bit along the west coast is there, and also the axis settles toward the coast and perhaps slightly offshore. 10 days down the road, the axis of the trough is further west, the axis of the ridge is offshore. That's good news. We could possibly get some southern stream energy breaking through to get to the Sierra and get to the southern Rockies. And 15 days from now, again, we're looking at a broad cold pattern covering most of the country as this trough spreads out. And again, with the ridge offshore, we have the possibility of systems coming out of the Aleutians, coming southeastward, and maybe some southern stream energy. So overall, I'm more optimistic about the pattern a couple of weeks down the road. And right now, the analogs suggest that more of a trough will be found in the vicinity of the west for the month of March, and I think that might be your banner month in the west in terms of natural snowfall for the upcoming next couple of months and probably overall for this winter. So after many weeks of frustration, there's at least some hope in the west. Some snow is going to fall early next week along the spine of the Rockies from Montana down to New Mexico. It looks as though it'll be another week or more before the major change in the pattern, but the pattern is changing, and shorter wavelengths suggest a western trough and much better weather for skiers, riders in the west during the month of March. That's the latest from SnoCountry.com. Don't forget the folks at UVEX Sports. Enjoy your sliding and have a nice President's Weekend time on the slopes. Take care.